that was focused on the roundabout near at Bond and Reed Market, but there was comment section. We had close to 700 people respond. What I saw on sort of the wildfire topic is, yes, people are really concerned about being able to evacuate. Sorry. Some of what people were bringing up was just not enough road capacity. I'm a little disturbed by Russ's and Ryan Oster trying to pigeonhole this, frankly, with saying, "Oh, we'd have to build so many lanes to evacuate for a wildfire," but that's not what we're asking for. We're asking for transportation routes that actually would really work in a decent way for a wildfire evacuation. Quite a few people brought up in the comment section the need for another bridge further south crossing the Deschutes River. The city has permitted a whole bunch of people living off of the Cascade Lakes Highway, and the Reed Market Bridge over Deschutes River is the furthest south one, but we've stretched the population a fair bit further south. And so I think transportation for evacuation is really a big concern.
Other neighborhoods? Mark.
Mayor, council members and staff, and other representatives, I just want to say thank you very much for hosting this and making it possible for us to bring our concerns and hopefully some recommendations in a positive light to you. Again, my name is Mark Gentle. I am on the Aubrey Butte Neighborhood Association Board. We have 1,284 registered members. That's 896 households. We've done 2 surveys in the last 6 months. The board has focused almost exclusively on the concerns of the neighborhood and bringing them to you in a way that is digestible. We have a fairly elaborate spreadsheet we'd like to send the council members if you desire it. But I want to give you just a nutshell. We got 273 responses on our drill down on the wildfire concerns. And to bring those together, basically, it's a kind of a 3-part concern. One is that we don't have adequate codes with a sufficient clarity to be actionable by the residents. And there's a sense of frustration about that. Whether it's your own home hardening and defensible space, or whether it's new construction that is going with combustible materials right up against the house. And I think the evacuation planning, we've heard Jerry's presentation, which is important. It needs to be communicated. And I think a real frustration is the outreach hasn't reached out. It hasn't hit the mark. And so I think in a positive way, to summarize it, it would be that you're going to find strong support among the Aubrey Butte neighbors for new code requirements that are clear, community-wide, with new specificity for new development. Communication through the neighborhood and through every resource that you can reasonably accommodate for the evacuation plan. Just the information of, like, on the ground. How do you get out of here? What should we know about your planning? And public safety enforcement, first through incentives, then through a real collaboration among the neighborhoods, and ultimately enforcement if that becomes necessary. I think there's a frustration that jumps out of the survey results that, hey, I'm doing all I can. My neighbor's not. We're in the same boat. We need to fix it all. And how do we achieve that? So in a nutshell, you're going to find strong support for a bunch of stuff
Great.
related to mitigation.
I want to sort of jump off of that and see kind of a show of hands. Who thinks, I mean, does anyone think a majority of the folks in your neighborhood know about the defensible space codes that we have and sort of the vegetation codes that we have now? I mean, we sent a letter and we got a response of folks going, oh, what? You know, kind of not knowing about that. So does anyone, I mean, I think that's one thing I'd love to hear from folks is how do we sort of crack that? Your neighbor that's not doing the thing that the other neighbors are doing, right? And what do we do to work with neighborhoods on that? Great, thank you. Other voices. Oh, yes, we're here.
So if it's green, they can hear me.
You're good.
Okay,
Oh.
awesome. So like the other neighborhood districts, we also did a survey, which we're happy to share with you, but it's specific for this meeting tonight. And I'm going to let Robin give some details, but there were kind of 4 top, what I'll call categories that bubbled up. City emergency plan and fire preparedness was one. So how do we do that? Kind of, Melanie, to tie in exactly with what you say, I think education and communication, because people are like, I don't know how to harden my homes. Like, it's just simple things. I don't know what a fire, like what plants are the right plants. So those type of things, but also like, I don't know what to do in an emergency, or I don't know what the city is doing today. And I think that's where the big like gap in communication is, and maybe where neighborhood districts can help like bridge that gap because we have a direct connection to them. Evacuation by far it was a top concern. Like, and I think again, it kind of goes back to the education and communication. Like, I don't know what to do. So like, just know your two green routes that are close to your home or where your work or wherever your school, wherever you might be. Most of the time, you know, that would be like something we could help people to communicate that. And then the last thing was what I call fire ignition risks. So things like the code, would new development code include the thinner mesh or, you know, 5 feet or whatever it might be, and then enforcement of that code. And then things like somebody said, oh, we had that grass removal program, which was great. Could there be like a 5-foot defensive program similar to that? You know, how can you help me? And again, some of this goes back to the communication and education as well. But then I'm going to let Robin chip in because she's one of Melissa's assessors, and she's done 60 assessments to date with another 20 on the calendar. So she is frontline what's happening and what people are saying.
So hi, my name is Robin Church. I don't feel like this is on.
No, it's online.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I serve as Firewise coordinator for my own community. I also serve as the emergency preparedness lead for the Summit West Neighborhood District. I also serve as secretary for Project Wildfire Neighborhood Coalition, and I also volunteer with the Central Oregon Master Gardeners Association and the at Holland's Head. I serve as one of the leads for the native plant bed. So we do a lot of education about firewise and waterwise plants. Cheryl mentioned that I am a trained assessor. I am an NFPA trained assessor. I've also been trained by Bend Fire to do home risk assessments, and I have been supporting our wonderful colleagues at Bend Fire to do risk assessments for people in the community and even outside of Bend. I've done 60 wildfire risk assessments this year, and I've got another 20 pending to be completed before mid-July. What I do is I go to a home and I evaluate a home, identify vulnerabilities, and then point out and prioritize actions or those things that people need to do to mitigate their risk. And it goes back to the basics. It starts with education. I was not surprised to see in our survey results that oftentimes people will say, well, it's not me, it's my neighbor. What is my neighbor? My neighbor's not doing this. We need to change the conversation, and it needs to become, what is it that I can do to protect my home, to protect my neighborhood, to protect my community. It's my contribution. It's my responsibility. And so I have that conversation with property owners because honestly, it is when I go to a home, what I'm telling people is that this is your home. This is your property. This is your fuel to mitigate and manage. This is what's within your control. And so what contribution will you be making to your neighborhood and to your community? And so, you know, it shifts the dynamic, I think, as Melissa had pointed out. It's not what's the city doing? It's not what's Ben Parks doing. It's their problem. You know, what is the insurance company doing? How is the city going to protect me? It's no, what am I going to do to protect my family, my home, my community? And what's my contribution? So with respect to some of the other things that were brought up, um, when I'm meeting with people, from my wildfire risk assessments that I've done, everyone needs to address their foundation vents. Everyone needs to, to install that 1/8 inch metal mesh material. We have significant wood fencing, connecting homes, and some of our homes are built very, very close together. We also have decks that, when they are less than 4 feet off the ground, they are not enclosed. We have wood stairs that are unenclosed that we need to screen or skirt. So there are some significant opportunities within the building code to make some improvements. With respect to density, I know that that's a concern that people have. And when it comes to density, I know that we need to build a lot of homes for people. In terms of proximity, if the proximity is going to be less than 20 feet, we really do need to build to a wildfire prepared home standard by IBHS. As recommended. If we're doing duplexes, triplexes, quads, it's really important to ensure that we're building to a neighborhood standard and to ensure that there are rules in place about flammable vegetation and materials. Infill is much better, according to the studies, than expanding into the wildland urban interface. So as much as people probably don't want to see it, growing up is a little bit better than growing out. With respect to the tree code, we really need to prioritize fire-resistant, low-water use trees over those highly flammable, higher water use varieties. So, we're talking ponderosa or good forests, and then other species of trees really can be very dangerous. There's a property owner who advocated to keep a tree. It's a juniper, large mature juniper, and it's flush against the house. In a wildfire situation, that's a home that probably wouldn't survive.
Final
Yeah.
thought, Robin, so we can just get to some other
Yeah.
folks, please.
And
But thank
then
you. This is really good information. Really good.
the other thing that people are concerned about is roads access and evacuation. And so it's not only what roads do we have, but it's also the flammable vegetation that's against those roads. And I do know that, we need additional interchanges on 97 for Southeast Bend in Deschutes River Woods area. We also have east-west connections that are being throttled or are highly congested. You've heard about a couple of those. And then one thing that we could consider doing is using or creating wider bike paths that would facilitate essentially the creation of a second evacuation lane, which would be great, uh, without it being a lane for cars.
Great. Thank you.
So one of the things that kind of came up after all of the notifications went out about how to harden your home, there are a couple of questions that we heard regularly. They're about dates of compliance, like when everything needed to be in compliance by. And then the fear of not knowing how you're going to be addressed or worked with before being fined. There are a lot of people in our neighborhood who are financially pinched. So there's a real fear for them. So just more information about how the city is willing to work with everybody on this project would be helpful. And then also in our neighborhood, about half of our community, or in my particular community, are renters. And so when they got the information, it didn't really do anything. But the majority of those properties are managed by third-party property management groups here in the city. And they work mostly with people who own the properties from out of state. And so there's a real opportunity there for us to work with those property managers to make sure that, you know, things are moving along the way that they should.
And you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but how many folks at this table own your home? If you would raise your hand. And how many rent? Do we have any renters at the table? So thank you for mentioning that, because that's exactly right. As a renter, you receive this letter that says, hey, you need to do all this property work, and you go, okay, you know, I don't do that. And you're not even obligated to give it to the owner, I guess, if you didn't want to or need to. So it's a
And
really good point.
when your owner is out of state,
Yep,
they find out also.
right, exactly. Okay, great point. Yeah. Other neighborhoods who want to chime in? I'm curious if folks kind of, to jump off of that, if they have, in just thinking about your neighborhood, what you think the barriers are for folks to address some of these issues that Robin brings up, that she can go to a home and address, you know, say, here's all the things that need to be fixed. Are there other, I'm hearing educational barriers, just knowing about it. I'm hearing financial barriers. Are we running into, you know, neighbors that are resistant in other ways? Or I'm just also curious, other barriers, or just anything else you want to add, but that just came up for me thinking about that. Yeah, James, and then we'll go to Larkspur. So.
I've had a few conversations over the last at least 2 years, with people not just in my district, but also in the county, right outside the city limits. There's a huge disconnect of lack of communication from the county to those individuals. That's a big concern. Another big problem is, especially on the southeast side of town, we have so much master plan, huge development going on. One of the questions that keeps coming up is, great, we've got these little cute green lines in the best of times. But what happens when Reed Market is getting built, say for 3 years and shut down? We've just lost a major escape route. Nobody knows these alternative concepts. And when we talk with the developers, this is something the council could do on a local level. Doesn't really might mean as much in Portland. But right now, when you do a transportation system plan, you're just looking at the best of times and maybe traffic. Maybe add a possible, well, what is the escape route? What happens when your neighborhood's taking 10 years to build? And in the meantime, this roundabout shut down, that roundabout shut down, that roundabout shut down. How do you inform all those people that not only are in that new neighborhood, but the old neighborhood that's right adjacent?
Yeah, Aaron.
Thank you, Erin, Sarah, Larkspur. Thank you for this opportunity to be here. And in addition to everything that everybody else has already said, for me, just personally, an issue is like, well, I might see things that need to be done, but I don't know the cost. I don't know who to call. Like, where are those resources? So like, even if I can point out some of the things that I've seen in these presentations, like, how do I actually go and get the mesh and put it on? And you know, how do I get it on my vents that are 20, 30 feet up on my house? So maybe there's a list of resources of local people that help with this kind of stuff, especially if they could do more than one thing to help do fire preparedness around somebody's property. I think that would be helpful resources. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Patty McCormick, Aubrey Butte. I'm going to piggyback a little bit on a few things that Mark said and then expand. You know, in terms, I kind of think of it in three things. One is complete prevention. How do you prevent things from happening? Then how do we respond to it? And then kind of what happens afterwards, right? For all of the code things that we're hearing, what worries me a little bit and what I've heard, you know, from our survey results is something like the comprehensive plan is going to take years to do. If we don't, quote, stop the bleeding, you know, stop allowing and encouraging to a certain extent the continuation of wood fences and all the mulch and the bark and all the things that we really know we shouldn't be doing. That has got to stop fast, right? And so there's a need for a sense of urgency. You know, what I heard in the tone of a lot of the survey answers is they want the city to do something. And so, you know, how long would it take to get these vegetation codes and the building codes updated for some of these absolutely obvious things that need to be done? You know, then we stop new stuff from happening. Then we deal with all the stuff that's already out there, right? And how do we risk mitigate all of that? The funding and some of the things you talked about, I've heard the 1/8 inch mesh a number of times. And yet from what I gather, what you buy at Lowe's is not necessarily fire resistant. Now, I don't know if that's completely true, but if it's not the right mesh and people start buying it and spending hundreds of dollars to install it and it doesn't actually do what it needs to do, we have all failed, right? So we have to be so precise about the actionable information that we provide people. So I think that's huge. The other thing that came through really loud was the funding. You know, a lot of people want to do the right thing. They can't push carts down the street to the big bins like I did 20 times. You know, how can we provide some sort of subsidies or some other sort of bin programs that maybe the city can partner with Republic Services to help with more curbside approaches, anything like that, or do those kinds of programs more often in different places so that they're closer to people's homes. One last thing, which was around the neighborhood districts themselves. We can communicate out to our members, but we can't communicate to those that aren't. I think the city could really, really help us somehow if you guys have a way of communicating to everybody, which you do, to really encourage people to join their NDs. You know, same with the Deschutes alerts. When I heard that your 10% goal, I'm almost kind of bummed by that. I mean, why can't we just put people on alerts? You know, I don't know. But if you have a way of contacting everybody, why don't we? And why don't we, you know, really do a campaign to push them to get on the alerts? Communication. Okay, I'll stop with that.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think good point about, okay, I went down to Lowe's and got the mesh, but how do we know it's the right one, right? Like,
I don't know.
Who's certifying that? That's, I think, a good point. I will say on the alerts, some of the reason that we discussed during goal setting and setting that metric around 10% is that we've done a pretty good job.
Okay.
So we've got the low hanging fruit. We've got a lot of people signed up and we're trying to reach those folks that for whatever reason haven't heard yet and haven't heard the good news about Deschutes alerts. So I don't know what you want to say. Yeah.
I mean, okay, so number wise, when we're looking at the county, there's almost 70,000 signups. We can't we don't know exactly how many households this, but when we look at Bend, we're at about 27,000 households. That's with an estimate of 35,000 households. So when we look at the numbers of increase, sometimes you reach saturation and the opt-in option, the reason we have to do it, there are things that are not. So Amber Alerts, which are the emergency alert system, there's wireless alerts that they show up on your phone, whether you choose to or not, but those are also controlled by your carriers. So the opt-in method is one of the easiest ways to try to get people to at least keep up with their data and information, but we can't. It's a state-based system and we cannot force people to join.
Yeah. But also I think good point in having, there's two separate things. We would never want to rely on neighborhood districts to get out, you know, these types of emergency alerts, but we can help as much as possible to help you get people to sign up for them, right? Which is where we want to be driving folks. Okay. All right. Oh, yeah, Jim, sorry, you're right next to me. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to confirm the item about Lowe's. few months ago, I went to buy 1/8 inch mesh and I couldn't find it anywhere, so I had to order it online. I believe, to help out a lot of the residents, that I hope the city would at least contact Lowe's and Home Depot and ask them to carry the 1/8 inch mesh. The right one for the, now online, I'm not sure I got the right one, but it's the only 1/8 mesh I found. Most of them stop at 1/4 mesh,
Yeah.
1/4 inch mesh. That's standard.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you for that insight. Okay. Okay, I saw Todd and Robin, and then I think we have one more question after this that we'll slide into that's related, but let's finish up our comments here.
Okay, I was just going to touch back again on the education side of things. I never see public service announcements really from the city of Bend on any of the local TV stations. It seems like there are a bunch of topics that we touched on here. Educating people about neighborhood districts is one. Educating people on, changes in the code. Educating people on things like the hardening the house. I think there's a real opportunity to reach much more of the people in Bend than what the neighborhood districts are reaching. And I think pairing up with the local media and trying to do public service announcements, because honestly, there's a lot of dead air on the evening news of pretty worthless stories. And I think we could get some much better, more educational, more direct to the point pieces out there if the city just made a concerted effort with the local media to do that. And switching subjects a little bit, if you look at the wildfire frequently asked question page that the city of Bend has, do you know how hard it is to actually get to the evacuation maps when you get to that page? It's buried. You guys have to have it under a question. You have to open that question, and then you say, well, go to Deschutes Emergencies website. So you go there, and then once you're on there, you have to kind of hunt around. So you actually have to kind of know that that map is actually out there in order to find it. So you can have all these great resources, but you're doing a really poor job of telling people how to evacuate because it is so buried that it is almost impossible to find unless you know that it exists. And so again, I think education is the answer on a lot of these topics. But I think you really have to make a bit of a budget to go out and try to do public service announcements.
One comment I'd like to make. So you all love Michaela Oliver and her work for neighborhoods, and sad to see her to go to Bend Fire, but that's going to be her, what she's doing on at Bend Fire. So Michaela, let's give it up for Michaela. I mean, sad leaving somebody work with the neighborhoods, but this is what she's going to is working on and continue to work on. So I think we're both hearing you, right, Michaela?
Yep. Yeah, and I think the answer there is like that Renee's giving is that we're staffing that in the fire department, right? So instead of just our main communications department, that's all that Michaela's going to be doing is working on communications for the fire department.
Is that also including that wildfire Q&A or frequently asked questions page?
Right, yeah, so we
Okay.
have your feedback on that. Thank you very much. And I will say there's a whole website rehaul that's going to be happening at the city because I agree that the website is not always the easiest to find things
No.
on. Okay, yeah, Robin, let's come to you and then I want to get to our next question.
Yeah, so in terms of barriers, education is one. We don't know what we don't know, right? But I would like to bring up another barrier that I've come across, and that is sometimes HOA, CCNRs, and deed restrictions or ARC guidelines prevent fire mitigation. Or they might require homeowners to have wooden fences or to install bark mulch around their homes. And so I've been actively reaching out to neighborhoods within Summit West. Fortunately, I know that Northwest Crossing ARC has made a change, and ARC has is now allowing people to make changes to their vegetation within 10 feet of their home. Fences still have to go through ARC, which is understandable. But we also in Summit West have a number of neighborhoods that have inactive HOAs. It's impossible to change deed restrictions if you don't have an active HOA organization. And so I would suggest that city consider adopting some type of ordinance that will such that HOAs can no longer prevent residents from hardening their homes or creating defensible space, much like the state of Colorado did.
Yeah, typically HOA regulations does happen at the state level, but I think that's a really good point and something that we can raise and look at and see what we can do.
Right.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. Thank you everyone for all those answers. Michaela, if you want to go to our next question. And this, I wanted to kind of shift a little bit more towards preparedness, which we were talking about with Deschutes alerts. But, you know, we've talked about things that we can kind of do regulatory. I'd love to hear ideas and what role neighborhood districts and the city could play in developing more of this preparedness mindset and sort of neighborhood connectivity, so that we're talking about if something does happen, you know who your neighbors are, you know who's maybe the older couple on your street that's not very mobile that you might need to help, you know who doesn't have maybe they don't know how to work their iPhone very well, they might need help finding out that there's an alert, or just like this sort of idea of like even neighborhood captains and sort of phone trees, or what I would love to hear ideas from folks, how we actually engage people that maybe aren't they're not as engaged as you all who are here tonight, but we want them also to be thinking about preparedness and how to act in an emergency. So thoughts about how the neighborhood districts can help with that, how the city can help with that, what you think people need to get more into this preparedness engagement. James, I see you. Go ahead. Into the mic, please.
One of the barriers we haven't been able to crack, but you as a city could, if you could get the school districts involved. I mean, the lists of parents and kids and everything that everybody shares with is just massive. I would recommend trying that.
School community, okay. Other thoughts, and this can kind of trickle down to what barriers do you see getting people to engage in your neighborhood district? Right, we're missing a couple of neighborhood districts tonight, right? Aubrey Butte extremely active, others maybe not so much. What do you think could just help you to be better engaged with your neighbors who don't show up to every meeting but need to hear about this sort of thing? Or what's been successful in the past too, if you've been successful?
I do not know the answer. but
Yes.
It's just one of the areas that we as a neighborhood district ourselves are still kind of struggling with and thinking about is how do we engage, right? And social media. You know, we're a bunch of old fogies, right? You know, we use Facebook, we've got our website, but we're not on Instagram, we're not on X, we're not on True Social. TikTok, God save me, right?
Yeah.
But other people are. And part of what I think we're trying to do, I mean, I love seeing some young folks here, you know, but we want to get more young folks involved earlier. And we know a lot of them are actively working and raising families and all of that sort of thing. But I keep thinking that there's got to be a way with social media that we can do something. It's just, I don't know.
Andy, you would need some support to do that, it sounds like,
Yes.
right? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Alex.
lot to the idea of content, but content production is a burden. And I think that's one of the things that gets missed, I think, a lot in social media. Oh, sorry. So at least in terms of River West, one of the things that we're prioritizing is access to information and redoing the digital presence as much as possible. So when you need that information, it's accessible. So content production is like feeding the beast. Every time you produce something, it only goes up for a little bit and then it disappears into the ether. So it's a real engine. Yeah, but that's a lot of time. And so at least in terms of the way that we're starting to structure the presence online is about making great content that's permanently there, evergreen in nature. So when you want it, you can get it. and how to make that easily accessible.
Yeah, good point.
So I have two things. One, one, like that's a big nugget. Like I don't know how to solve it. I can tell you that the groups that are not as active in the Summit West Neighborhood District are not, probably not because they don't want to be, but they have families, they work full time. Maybe, you know, if they're a two spouse household, they both work full time, and the kids, if they have kids, they're in activities. And I know, like now my child's in college, so I have more free time, which is part of the reason why I'm volunteering to be on the neighborhood district. But I don't know the answer, but I know we're missing a big group in that demographics. I just don't know how to connect with them. And then so I don't have the answer, but I just
That's a
think
great
that's
point.
where we need
Mhm.
to focus. And then the second piece is like, I don't know if every neighborhood district has an emergency preparedness lead like we do with Robin. And so, and obviously Robin is extremely qualified and experienced. So we're very fortunate to have her in Summit West, but maybe, but she can, you know, you can train people and teach them. And maybe that's something that the other districts think about, is having an emergency preparedness.
Yeah, sort of like you have the land use chair, but maybe there's another
Mhm.
role of.
Yeah,
emergency.
yeah.
Great. I love that. Yeah, Mark.
So we did a survey question related to this, and we got positive feedback on the idea of a video presentation. Maybe Melissa, she's so good, where is she? I don't know. You know, using real life examples of, you know, here's the tree. It's 4 feet from your siding. You don't have to take it off, but trim it up like this, you know. There is a video out online. You go three inches deep and 4 inches to the side and you can find it. But I mean, if you can, people love the videos. Y'all could sponsor it. We could infiltrate it through, you know, multiple, what's happening, kind of blast emails. I think it's one of the techniques that we asked our neighbors about, and they said, yeah, it's
3 to 5 minutes at a time.
Yeah, short videos, short videos.
Yeah.
right. Sure.
Not as short as TikTok, but short. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah.
Quick thought on the preparedness.
Yeah.
So right now, it's like people have to request that somebody comes out to their house to do sort of the walk around. Maybe the city should think about targeting a specific neighborhood on a specific date, put signs out, you know, like in the median in advance saying, hey, this Saturday, we're going to be doing this in your neighborhood at this location, instead of waiting for people to find out, oh, they do free inspections, you know, make it proactive. Tell people you're showing up and they're all invited.
Okay. Yeah, if you have a food truck, that's probably even better. I mean, I was just thinking about, yeah, what are other things that are happening in neighborhoods where we could also be present, right? And be signing people up for these things like to shoot alerts and all of that. Okay, so I wanted to be respectful of time, and I also want to give time for my council members to kind of reflect what we've heard back here and talk about anything you want to say, having heard this information. This is a continuing conversation. As you can see from how we've sort of laid out our goals, this is going to be something that we're working on the next biennium for sure. And it is very helpful to have specific examples of kind of what's happening on the ground with your neighbors in your neighborhood for this specific issue, because we hear a lot of people that are concerned, but we want to know, how do we meet those needs? What are those needs, right? So I will start down on this end with my council colleagues, just if you want to take a little bit and just any observations or reflections or anything you want to say to the group here before we wrap up.
Yeah, I'll just speak real quickly. Megan Norris, Bend City Council. Yeah, I think I really appreciate everyone showing up tonight. I think it's really vital, and obviously it's life-saving. So it's so important that we all participate. I know for myself, I'm a little frustrated. My neighborhood association is one of these that's not showing up, but we're working on it and wanting to get them more involved and activated. It's more of a question, and my neighborhood does happen to be Firewise community. And so I have received a lot of this information just strictly because, through my Firewise neighbors and the organization around that. So I'm just curious how many folks are involved in Firewise communities, and what are your thoughts or reflections on those?
Yeah. let's see, just by show of hands, who's, and if you don't know, then that's good to know too. Okay, so yeah, we're looking at maybe half. That's a good question. I think something that could.
I just
also
love a
be
way, I
helpful.
mean, it would be amazing if we could look at that as a city and somehow make it a requirement for
Mhm.
our neighborhoods.
Yeah, thank you. Ariel Mendez, Bend City Council. Yeah, this has been really great. I really appreciate everybody spending the time this evening. I always tell everyone, sign up for those Deschutes County alerts. So the reason why we're almost reaching saturation, I'm sure, is just because I keep reminding everyone. But I really appreciated Robin Church's comments and describing the work that she's done. I kind of found myself wondering maybe what can we do to clone Robin? Like we could use another 100 of you maybe. But I like the idea about fast tracking certain low hanging code updates. That's an idea that City Council has talked about in other areas where we know it is so hard to do this work quickly, and we're doing the best we can. And I do think that there are opportunities where, you know, if we can kind of fast track certain things that are doable, then we should. Yeah, Aaron's point about who do you call? You know, there's the DIY approach to doing defensible space, but there's a really good business opportunity there for a contractor to come around and say, I've been certified by the city in terms of training, and, you know, we do this for backwater valve testing. We have a list of approved contractors. Maybe there's an opportunity there. So lots of really great ideas tonight. Really grateful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I've been taking notes all night, and I think that's a really good sign, because I think there's a lot of really good ideas, and I really appreciated hearing from everybody. And I say that as we have a massive quantity of decomposed granite sitting in our driveway right now, as we're getting rid of our mulch, trying to make our home more fire-wise. Yes, so if you know any teenagers that would like to stop by and help us out with that, that'd be great. No, I think that the things that I really, one of the things I really got out of this today was that like people need to know, right? People need to know what to do. They need to feel more comfortable living in the environment that we live in. And you know, we need to be better at how we communicate with people. We need to be a little bit more creative, and we need to do it more urgently. I really heard that from you, that like if it needs to happen now. And so thank you for that. And I'll be taking all these notes with me as we go forward. So yeah.
Yeah, Steve Platt, I also got multiple scrolls here on the great comments, so thanks, I appreciate that. I'm going to take away the financial barriers to making it happen. And the angst of what is the engagement process going to be when you go walking up to my house and telling me I got to fix this. So I want to be mindful of how we approach the population and how we enable them to get there so that we can all be safer. That's it. Thanks.
Mike.
As everybody said, thank you all for being here, and thank you all for being so actively engaged in this particular topic. The urgency I'm taking away, I mean, we've seen, the weather that we've had here recently. We've seen the fires that have already cropped up this season. It's still pretty early. I think communication, and education, like those are, I think, really, really important. And we've heard a lot of really good ideas tonight about different ways to be more creative, getting it out more frequently, shorter schools. I would echo the moving assertively on the code review and update. I think as counselors, we're always like, come on, let's, but we have a very ambitious city, really great staff here, and a lot of work to do on a lot of fronts. And this one is really important. So we need to figure out how to think about how we can make that happen in a thoughtful way, but a little more quickly. And I really appreciate what you said, Robin, about the, this idea of the alerts and own your zone, like people taking responsibility for their own space. My wife and I are about to do that with our own home this summer. And the more I hear, the more I realize I can see, oh yeah, there's that part too. And there's that thing I got to fix. But I think for all of us to continue to communicate in that to people that we interact with regularly, when a fire comes up, a chance to talk to somebody about, what are you doing at home? Here's the 2 things I just did. And I think it's just really important for us to all do that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight and for everyone's interest. Obviously, there's so much interest in this topic. You've conducted surveys, you've gathered so much information, you're starting to do assessments. We have a neighborhood district doing assessments of homes. That's amazing. And I just think this topic is so ripe to build community. And so not to be repetitive of what everyone said, I'll kind of talk about that. And I hope that as a city, we can use this topic area as an opportunity to help elevate the neighborhood districts and help to build community. So thanks for all your amazing comments, and thanks to my fellow city councilors. I'm really, grateful to hear what everyone said. Yeah, I'm in a neighborhood that I hope we can do fire-wise really soon.
Yeah. Yeah, so thanks everyone again for being here. We can't really say it enough. We know it is time out of your day to hopefully speak more than, speak to us, which is what we wanted tonight. And I also took a lot of notes. I thought some points that I would bring out was just the point about renters and property management and out of state owners. Like, how are we making sure that we're breaking through to folks? And also the thing that we hear and is coming through on your comments is people are concerned. You could even say they're afraid, they're worried, right? And so one of the things I think we can do and we can help you do is take away a little bit of that fear by giving out the right information and talking about what actions people can do. It always feels better when you're like, okay, what actions can I do? Is it making a plan? Is it changing how my house is outside? So I think I really want to lean into that a lot. And I think the neighborhood districts are a great platform and opportunity to do that. So appreciate all that you do for your community and volunteering your time. You are not paid to be here tonight. You're not paid to be on these boards. You do it because you want to help your community, and we really appreciate that. And so we look forward to continuing to work with you on this, and then seeing some of you hopefully back for another roundtable in the future, another discussion. Renee.
For those of you who took surveys, please send those to me and I'll make sure that the counselors see all the work that you did, since they were not able to be presented to me. So send them my way, please.
Thank you.